What would you risk if you truly believe you were the best? For Phil Ivey, the answer was everything. His reputation, poker immortality, and millions of dollars. This is the incredible true story of Phil Ivey's most legendary wagering spree that had the entire poker world on edge. In 2009, Phil Ivey did something that had the entire poker world holding its breath and asking one question. What was Phil Ivey thinking? It was the height of the WSOP, and Phil Ivey already had 2 glittering WSOP bracelets in his collection from that very year. As the WSOP unfolded, whispers spread like wildfire through the poker rooms that Phil Ivey had millions on the line in side action, including a massive $5 million wager with Howard Lederer. To understand the $5 million wager, we have to step back into the electrifying atmosphere of the 2009 WSOP. Ivey had just secured his 7th WSOP career bracelet in the Pot Limit Omaha event, showcasing his versatility across mixed games that few players could match. Howard Lederer was no stranger to high-stakes action. The two had a history of friendly wagers, but this one escalated to legendary status. Reports emerged around June 16, 2009 that Ivey and Lederer had struck an even money deal. $5 million on the line for Ivey to win at least 2 WSOP bracelets over the next 3 years from 2009 till 2011. If these bracelets came from the WSOP Europe, it would be a push, meaning no money would be exchanged. This wasn't just a casual side bet. It was a testament to Ivey's confidence in his dominance and Lederer's belief that even the best could not repeat multiple bracelet success in an era of exploding fields and tougher competition. But the $5 million wager was not isolated. It was just a part of a broader frenzy of side action surrounding Phil Ivey during that year's WSOP, especially as he charged towards the main event final table. Phil Ivey, known for his love of action and everything, thrived in this environment. As the main event progressed, with still a monstrous field of roughly 2,500 players remaining, Andy Block offered Ivey 99-1 odds that he would not win the tournament. Phil Ivey reached into his pocket, pulled out $20,000 and tossed it to Andy, a spur-of-the-moment move. And suddenly, Andy Block was staring down the barrel of a potential $2 million payout if Phil Ivey went the distance. As the main event field thinned, whispers of the wager began to swirl through the high-stakes world. And here's the twist. If Andy did lose, most of that $2 million would not even land in Phil Ivey's pocket. That's because Gus Hansen got wind of this wager when there was about 1,000 players left. He approached Ivey with a proposition. Gus wanted to buy the wager. Phil Ivey agreed, but on one condition. If he pulled off the miracle win, Ivey would still collect $900,000 for himself. Gus Hansen took the deal, and suddenly Phil Ivey was on a $900,000 free roll chasing poker glory with someone else's money. A move that exemplified how props often get flipped and traded among the elite like stocks on Wall Street. Before the buzz had even begun to subside from the poker community becoming aware of the Andy Block situation, Tom Dwan reportedly admitted that he would have to give Ivey $1 million if he were to become world champion. Tom Dwan later admitted that this wager was made on a lark, but with Ivey surging through the field, the pressure mounted. Mike Matusow reportedly owed Ivey $100,000 on a similar prop. Daniel Negreanu had a standing wager with Ivey dating back years, that if they both play the same event and one of them wins, the winner gets $200,000 from the other. Even Phil Gordon hinted at an unspecified wager that had him quaking in his boots, adding to the intrigue without revealing details. In an effort to offset their potential losses to Ivey and perhaps make a big score for themselves, both Daniel Negreanu and Mike Matusow began collecting action from other players. And this time, they were wagering on the other side of the coin, meaning on Ivey's ability to take down the main event. According to Ellie Elezra, Negreanu had his money on Phil Ivey, while his opponents were backing chip leader Darvin Moon. On paper, Darvin looked untouchable, sitting on a massive $59 million chip stack, nearly 30% of all the chips in play, and almost 6 times Ivey's count. But Moon wasn't exactly striking fear into the poker world. The soft-spoken amateur repeatedly downplayed his success, chalking it up to a wild run of cards rather than skill, which only fueled confidence from those backing Ivey's ability to outmaneuver him when it mattered the most. Doyle Brunson was the first to publicly admit he'd take the action, writing in his blog that he'd be rooting for Darvin Moon at the final table. Brunson said that he had initially thought he would be rooting for Phil Ivey. However, when Daniel wanted to take Ivey over Moon, he felt compelled to back Moon instead, who held 6 times the chips of Ivey. He explained that since it was a must-win affair, there probably would not be any other action. He also apologized to Ivey, noting that he would not be rooting for him this time and that, in the end, business came first. But even poker legends can have second thoughts. The following morning, he revealed in a tweet that he had backed out of the wager and sold his $50,000 action against Ivey to Gus Hansen and now was officially rooting for Phil Ivey. Daniel Negreanu allowed Lederer to take 10% of his action, and the two quickly spearheaded a group wager, collecting almost $1 million from 6 or 7 pros, wagering against Ivey, winning the whole thing. Even Howard Lederer was right in the mix, contributing to this pot, while he had the separate $5 million bracelet wager with Ivey. Pros like John Juanda, Brian Rast, and Nick Schulman also chipped into the Negreanu-Lederer pool, taking Moon's side for amounts that contributed to the $1 million total. But as soon as Phil Ivey heard about all the action Negreanu was collecting, he reportedly decided he wanted to get involved in this deal. Ivey took half of the action, which meant he would stand to win $500,000, Daniel Negreanu would receive $400,000, and Lederer himself would get $100,000 if Ivey could win the main event. On November 7, 2009, Ivey entered the main event final table, carrying the hopes and financial interests of numerous backers. Fans lined up hours before the doors opened at the Penn & Teller Theater, hoping to get a seat to see the legend attempt to win poker's biggest prize. Each time Phil Ivey was in a pot, the crowd became eerily quiet and then burst with excitement if he had won a hand or gasped in despair if he lost one. Unfortunately for Phil Ivey and his supporters, the poker gods had different plans. In a cruel twist of fate, Phil Ivey's tournament life ended in 7th place when his ace-king ran into Darvin Moon's ace-queen. The flop came queen 6-6, giving Moon the decisive pair and leaving Phil Ivey drawing nearly dead. The elimination was particularly painful given the astronomical amounts of money at stake. Had Phil Ivey managed to win the tournament, he would have collected not only the $8.5 million first prize, but potentially over $6 million in side action, making his total haul larger than any single tournament win in poker history at that time. Phil Ivey won $1.2 million for his 7th place finish, but it was devastating for his props. Estimates pegged his total losses from main event side action to be around $3 to $4 million. A gut punch that made headlines as one of poker's most expensive near misses. Yet, Phil Ivey's resilience shone through. He later reflected in interviews that these wagers fueled his fire, pushing him to play even sharper. As for the $5 million wager, its timeline extended beyond 2009, evolving into a multi-year saga. Analysts reportedly had Ivey as roughly a 4-to-1 underdog to win a bracelet, while Phil Ivey himself estimated his chance at about 40-to-1 for any particular event he entered. Phil Ivey wasted no time getting back to work chasing bracelets. He started off with 2 early cashes in the 2010 series and came close to reaching a final table, finishing 12th in the $2,500 PLO event. Then on June 19, 2010, after 37 events, he finally broke through, winning the $3,000 horse tournament. When asked about the first place prize, Phil Ivey shrugged and told the cameras that he had no idea. While other poker players were praising Ivey and tweeting high praises, there was one man, while I'm sure he enjoyed seeing Ivey win the bracelet, absolutely hated it at the same time. His tweet was simple: gulp. It sure seemed like Howard Lederer was destined to lose this wager. It was hard to imagine that Phil Ivey would not win one more bracelet between then and the end of the 2011 WSOP, especially given his proficiency in smaller, non-hold'em events. But poker, like life, throws curveballs. On April 15, 2011, Black Friday occurred when major online poker sites, including Full Tilt Poker, were shut down. This seismic event froze players' funds, sparked lawsuits, and shattered trust in the industry. Phil Ivey and Howard Lederer, as Full Tilt owners, were at the center of the storm. Players could not access their money, and the fallout was brutal. In a bold move, Phil Ivey announced that he would boycott the 2011 WSOP in protest, vowing not to play until Full Tilt repaid its users. It was a principled stand, but it came at a cost. Without stepping foot into the Rio, Phil Ivey could not win that second bracelet. The wager ended with Phil Ivey falling short just one bracelet. Howard Lederer emerged victorious, pocketing $5 million, though the exact payment details remained private, as is common in these gentlemanly wagers among pros. Some speculated whether the deal was voided due to the circumstances, but reports confirm Ivey lost, honoring the spirit of props where excuses rarely fly. Phil Ivey's 2009 wagering spree remains one of the most remarkable examples of high-stakes extravaganza in poker history. While he did not win the main event and collect those millions in side action, his willingness to put such enormous amounts on the line demonstrated why he is considered not just one of the greatest poker players ever, but also one of the game's most fearless players. These stories serve as a reminder of why Phil Ivey isn't just respected for his poker skills, but revered for his unshakable spirit. In an era where poker has become increasingly professional and calculated, Phil Ivey's willingness to put millions on the line based on pure confidence and competitive fire represents something that many feel has been lost from the modern game.